don't say we don't treat you here at the Geordie Journos. A little bit of a location shot for 2 of the 3 Musketeers anyway today. We brought ourselves down to Colour Coast to talk a little bit of Newcastle United, a little bit of social media storms, a little bit of transfer news, and a whole lot more. Before I get into the conversation, and you probably know who I'm going to start on, I'll get the bits and bobs out the way. Look, we love you watching these videos. We love doing them. Give it a like, give it a share, and definitely give it a subscribe to make sure that you get the videos every time that we do a video. It'll pop up in your little feed on YouTube, and that's exactly what you want, isn't it? What a season for Newcastle United, the Geordie Journals, on scene in the area. Right, so on to Matt's Bruno Guimaraes. I'm not having it. No way, I'm not having it. Look, I don't think the 360 tweet was particularly offensive, and I'm not really going to go on about that, to be honest. I think it's done. He had a pop back. He was right to have a pop back because he was picked out in the photo, so it was the bit that was tailored to Bruno, Byrne. I can't remember the other 2. Who was it?
Joe Linton.
Almiron. And Almiron. It was tailored to say they were probably the ones that people were criticising, or the 360 in particular I thought were the worst. I don't know. You can only ask them. Again, enough about that. What I'm going to say about Bruno, I've been going to St James's Park since August 1992. I've seen highs, lows. There are plenty out there who've probably been going a lot longer and seen a lot more highs and a lot more lows. But I can only judge what I've seen in person. And what I've seen in person, I've not seen many more well-rounded players than Bruno Guimaraes. He's a player that I absolutely love wearing black and white. And if he needs to know it, and I'm not sure he does, but he looked a little bit stressed about it yesterday. If he needs to know it, you're absolutely loved in this part of the country. 99.9% of Newcastle fans are delighted with what you've done. I love his character. He's really come out of his shell in the last 12 months. A proper character. His English is coming on. We're seeing the little quirks that he has on the pitch, with and without the ball. And I haven't come across many players in that time. Look, there's been greats. Peter Beardsley's, Alan Shearer's. There's been greats. There really has. Not many who are able to really dictate the pace of a game and run things the way that he has and does. Slows things down, quickens them up. We're talking about Tonali in the same breath recently, but while Bruno Guimaraes has come to Newcastle and done that for every moment he's been here, 18 months of it, at the top level, at Premier League level, and I don't think he was bad at the weekend. I think I did see some bits on social media, people saying he hasn't had a good game for X, he hasn't had a good game for Y. I'm telling you, and I'm not saying I'm an expert on football, but I know a bit. And I think there's probably a few years out there might criticise us for saying that, or might think I don't. But what I would say is, take him out that team and you'll see how bad a player he is. If you think he's having on a bad run, take him out that team and replace him with anybody. Replace him any player you want. And you'll see Newcastle United, the way that they play, the way that they operate, the way that they defend, the way that they attack, will totally have to change, because he's integral to everything that happens in that midfield. The dirty work, he does it all. Every bit of it. Slows the game down, holds onto the ball, is brave. Never seen a player as brave on the ball in a black and white shirt. Somebody who wants to take the ball, allows players to come onto him, sucks players in and creates spaces for everybody around him. Do you forget that, critics? Do you forget that? What I will say though, everybody's right, got their right to have their opinion, and everybody's right to criticise. In 360, if you think Bruno's been rubbish, just say it. If he's been rubbish, fine, say it, back it up. Player fires at you, well look mate, I think you've been rubbish. Say it if you think it. If you don't think it, fair enough, no bother. And that's the same for any fan. If you think a player's rubbish, you've got a right. If you pay your money on that door, or you watch it on the TV, everyone's got a right to an opinion. Doesn't mean it's any good, but everybody's got a right to opinion. And I've got a right to mine. And I think Bruno is magic. I think he's a star, and I think we need to love and cherish him for as long as he wears a black and white shirt. Because I'll tell you now, If he wants to leave, and there's no suggestion, stop being silly, but there's no suggestion he does, loves it, loves the area, loves the fans, loves the club, wants to be part of history or story. I'm not quite sure what comes out in translation, but he definitely wants to write his name in the history books. I don't think he's going anywhere. But we need to love him, we need to cherish him, enjoy him while he's at this football club. And I think that's a little bit of an impassioned rant over from me, Jordan. You're just sitting here looking at me thinking, is he going to shut up?
It was certainly a Kennedy special, that one, but no, I think you've summed up brilliant there, as you always do, not to go smoke your arse too much, but
we'll bleep that bit out.
Yeah, we'll bleep that. It's not within the first 2 minutes, so fine. Yeah, Bruno, I think because he set such high standards for his first 80 months at the football club, that maybe there has been a little bit of a dip, and fans have picked up on it straight away. And obviously he has came under some criticism by some sections of the fans. I've seen it on social media after the game, and as you mentioned, their opinions, that's fine. But Bruno's reacted now. He's saying what everyone's saying. So I think as a fan base now, we need to be, fans need to be mindful of what they put. Certainly the popular accounts on Twitter, be mindful of what you're putting on there, because players are seeing it, and Bruno has seen it and has taken offence to it. Look, he's let's not beat around the bush. His response, it was quite strong. Using the word stupid, silly, I think he mentioned in there as well.
Yeah.
So he was clearly affected by it now. So we know that Bruno looks at social media. So let's just be a little bit more kind, shall we say. We're 2 games into a season. We shouldn't really be piling on players already.
We stood here on Geordie Journos and talked about saying it didn't feel like progress on Saturday, even though it was a better loss than what it was the last time they went to Manchester City. Because the understanding is we believe we can be better. Newcastle United can be better than what they showed at the weekend. It's no reason to jump off a cliff and say that they're the worst team on the planet, because they weren't. And they gave a decent account of themselves, but it was well below where you expect. There's a little bit of to and fro in that one as well. It's not the case of Newcastle United just didn't perform, because using that sort of as a framework, that means any team on the planet, if they play at their best, can perform against anybody. It doesn't always work like that. Football isn't the game it was even 3 to 4, 5 years ago. It's such a tactical, organised game where every little small movement matters, and you're playing against the best tactician on the planet, who, albeit, has just literally had his team playing virtually the same team, didn't make a substitution against Seville. There are reasons why you thought Newcastle might have had a chance, but look, there's no shame in being beaten Manchester City, and I don't think anybody, we in particular, weren't saying that.
No, we weren't overcritical about the performance. We just
didn't quite reach the levels, did they?
Yes, because it was almost that, because we've watched Newcastle a lot of years, covered the team since the Saudi takeover, and we know how good this team is. And our sort of criticism after the game, if you like, if that's what you can call it, was the fact that we didn't see Newcastle at their best, and that was a little bit of a disappointment afterwards, because I thought there was times in the game when Newcastle really could have got at City. But it's really difficult to make that judgment, because you mentioned there, Pep Guardiola is literally the greatest tactician on this earth.
He might go down as the greatest manager ever.
And Pep Guardiola changed his tactics to counter Newcastle's threat. His comments after the game were, we were sat in the press conference at the time, and I was typing away on my headphones, and I had to take my headphones out because I was just sort of like so intrigued by what he was saying. Saying if we had played an open game against Newcastle, they would have destroyed us.
I mean, we looked at each other, it was like, has he just said that? Yeah. Like, it was an incredible thing to come out with. Bearing in mind he wasn't questioned on that as well. Shows how high he values Eddie Howe and how high he values the way that this Newcastle United plays and the players within it. So look, criticism is fine. Don't take it too far. I don't think the stuff yesterday was too far. I think the player maybe will regret firing back. I think there's probably a little bit of that in there, but I think he was totally justified. Look, we've achieved X. Everybody wants it to go to the next level. Everybody does, even the players. A slight dip isn't going to change that, and I think it's all positive, and I think there'll be a few smiles on faces if we're going to beat Liverpool, which I think we will this weekend.
Well, certainly you'll see a big reception for Bruno Sunday. I say you mentioned they went a little...
I hope they do. I hope War Flags make a big fuss about it. Yeah. I know they came out in support of Bruno straight away. Let's get that brilliant flag they've got. the welcome flag that they brought out for him. Let's get that right front and centre and show everybody and show the player himself that despite what certain critics, because this isn't aimed at 360 in particular or anybody else, but that's the criticism we see. Now, I would imagine there's a fair bit of other criticism that fires through to him that we don't see, and he doesn't respond to. And it's probably a cumulative effect, and I think that happens with a lot of players, that they get this sort of thing, and there's probably a breaking point when they say, look, come on now, I've had enough of this. And I think that was one of those moments for Bruno. But yeah, tremendous player who would grace 99% of teams on this planet with a starting position. Let's not complain too much, eh? Right. I've had enough of that now. I've had enough. I think we've dealt with that one.
Yeah, that's maybe look at something a little bit more positive.
Lewis Hall?
Yes, Lewis Hall.
Go on then, Jordan. You're the man in the know. Well, we'll try and pretend you are.
Yeah, so Lewis Hall, Newcastle United's 5th summer signing, season-long loan deal, obligation to buy next summer. I believe it's around £28 million plus £7 million allowance. That'll be activated on performance-related criteria, which was mentioned in the Newcastle United press release yesterday.
A lot of panic about that.
I imagine it's something so minor.
Yeah, we don't know the detail on that. We haven't got that at present. I'm sure we will in time. But I think there was a lot of panic about the Chelsea statement compared to the Newcastle United statement.
Yeah, it was different.
I mean, I don't know the answer to this, and I'm only speculating, but there's probably certain things in the wording which is probably a bit of clever accounting in the way that money is taken. You know, if you say it's obligation, I wonder if that maybe has to count onto certain figures early, where maybe I don't know. Again, I'm just speculating, but that was my immediate thought that came to mind. But I think never mind all the Chelsea message boards, it will be made permanent. There isn't any suggestion that I've heard anyway that it won't be. And what do you think he's going to bring to the side? Because we've kind of, another player was named in shown in that image was Dan Burn, and I find it hard to criticise Dan Burn because we were talking about this the other day, and you made quite an impassioned defence yourself when we're talking about critics of him, that it's a bit unfair considering he's playing out of position.
Well, it's exactly that. Dan Burn, I think, probably since the back end of last season, attracted a lot of criticism from supporters, which again I do understand because of his limitations as a left back. But again, that's because he's out of position. So okay, yeah, Dan Burn is usually solid defensively. Sometimes comes up against the odd fast winger and sort of give him the run around at times. But again, playing out of position, wants to go forward, tries to go forward, can't fault his effort.
Oh, he does give it a go. He'll do the overlapping, but he just hasn't quite got it in his locker to maybe produce much after that.
And then that's because he's a centre half playing at left back. He doesn't have that quality. So the criticism for Dan Burn I will never have, because look, I think when they first signed Dan Burn, I think we both said it, you know, he'll be a stick and plaster for 6 months.
Felt that way, and he's been a lot more than that.
He's been so much more than that. And look, you see how valued he is around the dressing room. Eddie Howe always speaks so highly of him, his leadership. I don't know if anyone's seen it. Might be a little bit of a spoiler here. Do you think I should stay away from it?
Episode, if you haven't watched the...
we'll not go into details, but episode 2 of We Are Newcastle United, the Amazon documentary, there's a nice moment in there involving Dan Burn.
Shows he's standing in the dressing room, shows he's standing in the leadership group, shows he's standing with the manager, and we know ourselves that the manager absolutely loves him as a player. I don't foresee, I mean, Jordan, you may disagree, I don't really foresee Lewis Hall coming in and replacing Dan Burn. Not in the short term.
Yeah, I think you're right. Lewis Hall's still only 18. Played 12 games last season at the Premier League level. It's a small amount of games, but to be fair, Lewis Hall, it's some standard that he was able to break into that Chelsea team, albeit how poor they were last season. So I think it'll take time. It'll be the same with the other side as well, Tino Livramento. Under Kieran Trippier. I think I see in the Man City game that he probably still needs a little bit more time to get up to speed with the way Newcastle play.
League Cup next month, that's what you'd imagine. You'd see them maybe start, I would guess. But you never know with injuries and things that happen. Football's a funny game, it can all change, and they might be in quicker than that, but I would think that's when we'll really see the blood of those type players who come in. A lot of money to spend on players who aren't going to start on the team though, isn't it?
It is. It almost feels like they've strengthened the squad rather than the starting 11. So I think they've had a great transfer window, but they haven't necessarily signed starters. I think that we looked at the first day of the season and we were surprised that Tonali ended up going in straight away.
I don't think he would have. If
No,
Longstaff
it's
had had a full summer,
Yeah.
I think Longstaff would have played. I think Eddie Howe almost hinted at that after the game. Look, it was a blessing in disguise. Not that, obviously we want fit and firing Sean Longstaff because he's an incredible performer for Newcastle United. Again, not to be too much of a spoiler, but I had tears in my eyes watching that first episode. Was really, really, really excellent. I really enjoyed the way that they put that together, and it was a lovely moment. Even though you've lived these moments already, to revisit that moment that they pick out in that first episode was quite incredible. But Sean Longstaff, I think he's going to have a case to get in this week if Joe Linton's. I mean, we've not heard anything on Joe Linton. I think everyone's waiting nervously to see. Look, another player who's come in for some criticism. Look, I don't think he probably has had his best 2 games. I think the player himself will probably admit that. It was a tough one the other day. Tough one at the weekend. The pockets that Foden and Alvarez were picking up between the lines, and then you had Kovacic in the first half running things further back. It was a tough task. It was a really tough task. Then you had the likes of Akanji and others who were dropping into that midfield and just making it almost impossible for Newcastle's 3 in there. But I think Newcastle United lose a little bit when Joe Linton doesn't play. I'd like to see him be fit and back in the team. And I hope it'd be nice to see Lewis Hall on the bench and maybe get a run out if things go.
Yeah, I think that's how they'll do it. I think they'll ease him in, won't they? And you mentioned their League Cup. I think that's probably a perfect opportunity to get him started. But I think just him as a sign, I think it's quite an exciting signing for the club. See, 18 years of age. I think won the young player with the academy last season with Chelsea. Impressed on his appearances against Newcastle. I think you might disagree on a couple of them, but I think he made his debut at St James's Park, and I thought he was really lively, really quick down that left hand side. There was one moment stuck out for me where he came in and played a crossfield ball with his right foot, which I thought was excellent.
Of course,
yeah. And then
needs a bit of defensive work. Let's not beat around the bush here, but he's an 18-year-old lad.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's still learned his game, who's played a lot of his youth career in midfield, so he's going to need a bit of defensive work. So I wouldn't expect the finished product when he comes in. That goes for Tino Livramento as well. Yeah. We're talking about a lad who really, since coming out of Chelsea's academy, he's only had half a season, or 3/4 of a season in the Premier League. Still needs time to learn and develop. And I think when you look at Eddie Howe and the way that he coaches, what better place? I think the club are pitching it to these players that this is the place to almost grow your England career and become England internationals of the future. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see a consistent, while Eddie Howe and Dan Ashworth remain there, a consistent approach to bring in these aged, 20 and under English players. I mean, a little bit more Anthony Gordon, who are on the fringes and who are on the radar of the England squad and England youth teams, but aren't quite there. I think this is the area where you'll see them kick on. Anything more to add, Jordan, or are we going to cut it there? It's quite a long one today.
I think it's we're approaching 20 minutes. Yeah, I think. I think just to cap off a quick summary on the transfer window, because as we speak now, it does feel like Newcastle are done in terms of incomings. But that could change if a Lewis Hall deal, a Lewis Hall-like deal becomes available, where they have a loan with an obligation to buy at the end, or indeed they get rid of 3 players in particular who are, I think, by the sounds of it, putting these maths together, earning just under 200 grand a week, and on to even in the Eddie Howe's plans, Jeff Henrik, Ryan Fraser, Isaac Hayden, if they can get them off the wage bill, there may be room to potentially look at other signings. But I think at the moment it does sound like they are finished. So reflections on transfer window, I think it's been a really solid one. I think they made some really shrewd additions. Okay, they haven't necessarily strengthened the starting 11 straight away, but they've signed for the future, and these are players that in this time next year or 6 months' time will be challenging for places in the first team.
Can't argue with that. I think the only thing that would maybe change things is a major injury, or if an offer that they can't refuse comes in the manner in which, say, Chris Wood and John Joe Shelby were in January. If there's an offer comes in that they can't refuse, I think that would be the only thing that would change the current balance of this squad. So right, we've kept you long enough. I think, yeah, we're about to go and should we get some fish and chips?
Might as well, since we're
why not? I think we should.
Not?
We'll take advantage of the reasonable weather, although I can see a big black cloud coming over. That's not
It
Norman.
is getting a bit dark now, isn't it?
I hope that's not Norman for the weekend. Right, I've told you before, give it a like, give it a share, and give it a subscribe. You can also put notifications on, so every time Geordie Journos put a video out there, you guys can get that straight away. I'm gonna flick a fly off my face. Right, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you at the weekend.